you ever have one of those days where you pick up your gun and you go to use it during the first round of play and the gun only goes full auto? No matter what setting you have the selector switch on, you only get full auto out of it. Well, there's a couple of factors that can cause that, and this video today is to sort of give you a leg up on exactly what to look for when repairing that. So let's get started. All right, let's start out with the assumption that you know how to remove the gearbox from the gun. If you don't, there's plenty of videos out there to do it. But assuming that you've gotten this far, you've got the gearbox out, but you have not disassembled it yet, the first thing you should check is your selector plate. There is a small spring that connects the selector plate to the cutoff lever. You'll see it's very tiny. It's about the size of a human hair, essentially. Check to make sure that that spring is in place and that it's actually functioning. If that plate is not pushing against the spring, it will not allow your gun to go into semi-auto. So if that's missing, then you've found the problem, and stop there and go ahead and replace that spring, and that should fix the problem. But what if that spring is still there? What next? Well, you're going to want to open up your gearbox. So go ahead, get your tools out, open up your gearbox, and let's take a look at the next thing. If you're not entirely mechanically inclined, at this point it might be best to contact a repair tech, but if you feel like you're comfortable with taking things apart, then let's proceed with that assumption. One of the first things you want to check once you've opened up your gearbox is to take out the sector gear and check the back of it. There is a small teardrop shaped cam on the bottom of that gear, and that is what operates the cutoff lever. So every time this rotates, it presses against the lever, and that makes the gun reset back into semi-automatic every time you pull the trigger. So pull the sector gear out and check that little cam, make sure it hasn't worn all the way down. If it's showing wear, then it's probably a good idea that it's time to go ahead and replace your sector gear. I have to say, in 99% of the time, these are pretty hard steel gears. So unless you're using like some sort of like low quality alloy gears, the odds of that getting worn down are pretty low, but I have seen it happen in the past, so check that. Once you've checked your sector gear, the next thing you want to check is your trigger switch. And this is probably the most common source of the problem, is the trigger switch wearing down. Go ahead and take it out of the gun. And the thing you want to look at is the little part that moves inside of the trigger switch. Some people call it the shuttle, some people call it the shoe, whatever you call it. It has a very small L-shaped piece of plastic on it, and that is what the cutoff lever pushes up against. Since it's kind of thin plastic out on the end, where the cutoff lever presses on it, that tends to wear down, and that is probably the best reason why this is the most common source for failures, is that little part wearing off, because the cutoff lever can no longer push up against this piece and allow it to go back into its beginning mode. So check that. If you see the tip of that is worn off, then you just need to replace the shuttle or the shoe, whichever you want to call it. If your gun is worn down to that point, it might be a good opportunity to just go ahead and replace the entire trigger switch mechanism, just so you're starting out with a fresh mechanism in the gun. It doesn't cost that much more for the whole thing, so you might as well go ahead and replace the entire set. If that is all working fine and there's no problems with it, one of the last things you need to check is your cutoff lever. That sits right underneath the trigger switch, and that connects your sector gear to the trigger switch. Sometimes the little metal lip that grabs the trigger switch will break off. Sometimes the arm will break right in the middle, but check to make sure you have an intact cutoff lever inside of there. So those are the main sources for guns to fail when trying to go semi-automatic. It will continue to fire full automatic regardless of if any of those parts are broken. And if you're playing outdoors, then it's probably not a big issue. But if you're playing here in an indoor arena, you're going to need semi-automatic. So check all those things. If you still have no luck, feel free to bring it into us here at Replay Airsoft. We do have a brand new tech working for us, and he's pretty much full-time here. So if you need to get your guns fixed, we have the ability to turn them around much faster now that we do have a full-time tech. So feel free to bring them into the shop. You can bring them in during any regular hours. We'd be glad to take a look at it. I've had probably 25% of the time when people bring guns in for repair, it's something really simple and we can turn it around very quickly, probably quicker than you think. If not, leave it with us and we'll get the thing back up and running for you. So, till the next time, don't let the bastards get you down. Thanks for that cough.